Thank you, Mathrubhumi, for investing in this very important product and this important initiative on World News Day. Fact-based journalism, honestly, to me, sounds like what it should be synonymous. Fact-based journalism, it should be synonymous terms, because journalism has to be fact-based, and if it's not, is it even journalism, is the question. And it's unfortunate that we have to talk about this today as reminders, because the fact is that journalism has become so much more than being honest and sacred to facts. We're so much more opinionated now than we were before. We're so much more committed to a particular angle, and a particular ideology, a particular slant than we used to be at some point in the not so distant past. And I think that really, if we come down to looking at the root cause of where society is today, is I think a lot of it has to do with the polarization that media is kind of fed into. I think a lot of us take time to absolve our contribution to the problem of polarization in society by blaming it on big tech. Certainly, algorithms and technology, social media algorithms and search algorithms have played an incredibly important role in this polarization of society, in any society, anywhere in the world, if you go and look at. But I don't think media has done enough to stand up to that trend and to fight it. I think the way that we can fight polarization, and if we agree, and if we all agree that polarization is the biggest challenge of our times today, much more than authoritarianism. I think authoritarianism, we sometimes confuse ourselves for being the biggest challenge of our times. I think authoritarianism is a symptom, the root cause is polarization. If we think about polarization being the main problem of our times, the way we fight it and the way we fight back against that trend really is to go back to facts. And if we are honest and truthful to our profession, we have to put facts as sacred, and we have to focus on the facts. I think at the Express we have always endeavored and tried to do that. We have an incredible editorial team. We're blessed to have them, who have been very committed to the cause and the mission of journalism, the role journalism plays in society, the role of free press in strengthening democracy. These are the things that we are actually committed to, and journalism really has a long shelf life, has a very promising future as a sustainable business, if we are committed, I think, to facts, and if we are committed to the larger role that we play. Post-COVID, a lot of post-COVID, more than COVID, I would say post the infodemic, rather than post-pandemic, let's call it post-infodemic. Through the infodemic, I think we've seen a lot of audiences and readers paying attention to the sources of news. They pay attention to where they're consuming their news from. No longer has it become, I saw it on TV, or I read it on a WhatsApp message, or I saw it in the paper. Now I see people paying attention to which paper, which channel, who sent it to me on WhatsApp. And I think that's an incredibly heartening trend. And I've got some data to back that trend and to tell you why it's heartening. Before COVID happened, before the infodemic happened, we were doing, at the Indian Express Group, we were doing 120 million users a month. At the peak of COVID, we touched 220 million users a month. That's in 6 languages across the world. This enormous growth that we witnessed in COVID, I think, goes to show the kind of conviction, the kind of importance that audiences are paying to the brands they consume news from, how discerning audiences are becoming to where they're getting the news and information from. I think we're one of the few newspapers today where in many cities we are selling more newspaper copies post-COVID than we did pre-COVID. For an English newspaper, that's not a very common trend to kind of see. So I think there is a certain understanding now from audiences about where they're consuming their content from, and so the importance to us, more so than ever now, is to again go back and reflect and think about what good journalism is, and indeed what a good journalist is. I've always been very. I followed the work of a professor at Columbia Journalism School named Srinivasan when I was studying journalism in the United States, and he always said a good journalist is somebody who is specializing and digitizing. So the digitizing bit, I think, we all recognize, and I'll park that to one side. The other bit, the specializing bit, I think that's an important piece where we have traditionally been defining a good journalist as somebody who's invested in understanding a particular domain very well. Somebody who's got domain authority, in a space that they pick or choose. So it could be defense, it could be sports, cricket, it could be climate change, whatever a journalist decides and goes deep into a particular domain. That's generally what we consider as a good journalist. I'd like to add to that I think a good journalist is somebody who is extremely curious. That's one, just a character, a characteristic of a good journalist now, somebody who's always curious about everything and anything. And more importantly, I think a good journalist is someone who is extremely empathetic. And I think that the empathy angle in journalism, I think we might need a bit of a reminder for, because when we talk about fact-based journalism, we have to be aware that whose facts, whose truths are we going to be paying attention to, and it is only if you are curious and empathetic to the other side, the various truths to every story. I think that's really where fact-based journalism becomes, an incredibly powerful tool. And it's not easy. I want to be absolutely clear that being a good journalist who's looking at multiple angles, who's trying to invest time and effort in finding multiple truths, looking at all sides, it's not an easy thing to do. In fact, if you look at all the efforts that these incredibly innovative technology companies have made in the news space, for instance, Apple News, one company that I've always admired is Apple. In the world, I've always admired this one company that's maintained their innovativeness, has institutionalized creativity in a way that we all wondered whether they would be able to after Steve Jobs. They've done everything right, and there's one thing that Apple has struggled with is Apple News. And the fact that Apple couldn't get news right, I think it really goes to show that what we do is hard. It's very, very hard. And if we are not committed to doing that for the right reasons, that is, if we're not committed to doing that to fight for democracy, to fight for empowerment, to fight for creating a society which is intelligent, which is getting smarter, which is expanding worldviews, we're going to fall into the short product life cycle world of the digital age. So I think coming back to fact-based journalism, focusing on that, reminding ourselves of that, I think that's extremely crucial. And I think that there can never be enough reminders, there can never be enough days where we take the opportunity to remind ourselves and our readers and our audiences on the importance of doing what we do and just doing it with integrity. Many news organizations in India have been doing this for the right reasons now for almost 100 years, more than 100 years sometimes. I just wish that we are all we all have the same conviction in the role that we play and the job that we do that we've had for all these 100 years. And I think with that, I'd like to thank Mathrubhumi for taking out for inviting me here and for creating this opportunity to discuss this very important issue. And all the best and good luck. Thank you so much.
So hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for having me, Mr. Shreyams Kumar, Deepika and Mayura. And just wanted to set the context for our panel with a small presentation. So the topic being fact-based journalism, is it a winning proposition or not? And please allow me to indulge a bit in Tamil, and I will explain to you what exactly I mean. Thiruvalluvar, more than 2000 years back, said, Epporul yar yar vai ketpinum, apporul meipporul kanbadu aridu. It simply means, what you listen from whom and where contextually. Please try and find the fact behind whatever you listen to, and that is what good brains is all about. So journalism is nothing but what we attempt to follow at Ananda Vikatan for 97 years. We are soon going to be turning a centenary, just like Mathrubhumi, as we are attempting to do this. And you can just, can you click please? The cartoon that you see, the irrepressible R.K. Lakshman, and if you can't see what it says there, of course you weren't spreading rumors. The charge is that you were spreading facts. Okay, and any guesses in which year R.K. Lakshman did this cartoon? Any guesses from the audience? It's about 60 years old, 1962. So nothing has changed for many, many years. There are a lot of challenges that journalism keeps facing from time to time. We can go to the next. And today, this is what journalism kind of looks like. How many of you are here from newsrooms who are filing multiple stories every day and at multiple timelines? So we are running a rat race. We are running on the treadmill, and it's actually kind of killing us. And so where does fact-based journalism have space in all of this? You can go to the next. Anybody care to elaborate? I think I have lived through a period where there was not enough information, and magazines and newspapers and media were the guardians or the gatekeepers of information. What needed to reach the public needed gatekeepers to reach. But today there's a problem where we have too much information. TMI is a kind of phrase that they use for that, right? There's far too much information. What do people need media organizations for? What do we need journalism for? What is fact-based reporting? Can go to the next. So on the left-hand side, I'm not going to mention any names here, but clickbaity journalism gets 7.4 million followers. And the fact checkers, and I'm sorry I left out Boom Live on this, but fact-based journalism gets 0.8 million. If you're lucky, you get 1 million plus views. So what is this truth? So are people really seeking the truth? And does truth really matter? These are questions that I will probably be posing the panel. And then what is the meaning of truth itself? Nowadays, that's all of that is getting challenged. Very recently we saw this, there is a lot of news that we would love to hear. These are things that we, our heart is pounding for such things. Okay, if, there's a problem in China, very quickly we will surpass them and we'll become number one in the world, right? These are things that we really love. So when these are unfortunately mainstream media which made these posts and these content, what's happening here? Where is truth? Where is the seeking of truth? There are real challenges that we seem to be facing today. Yeah, we can go to the next. Our former DGP from Tamil Nadu, Vijay Kumar, he's a Malayali, so all of you must know him very well. There was one section of a political wing of a party which wanted him to be the governor of Jammu and Kashmir, when Jammu and Kashmir was still a state. And then they started, putting out this. And then there were many media houses who actually posted this saying that he is likely to be the governor of Jammu and Kashmir, and then it all fell apart because this is again wishful thinking and wishful journalism. And there are so many, each and every political party are running their own newsrooms in the social media, and all of that is actually, impacting our news cycle. Next. So can anybody guess which of these two images is a fact and which is has been put out on the internet? Any guesses? So anybody in the audience who thinks left side is the correct wrapper? Any show of hands? Left side is the correct wrapper. Any show of hands? Anybody still awake? Yeah. Or the right side is the correct wrapper? Okay, some hands came up. Yes, the right side is the correct wrapper. And obviously, I don't need to tell you which IT wing specialized in the left side wrapper. And then there were cases which were foisted against us for this also. And, it just happened. So what is truth is so in the early days, there used to be a problem where there was not enough evidence for uncovering the truth. Now there is too much of evidence. Video evidence is not enough, audio evidence is not enough, visual evidence is not enough. What is evidence has now become a question, right? So please, next. In my age, I am 52. There used to be something called political correctness. Political correctness means you don't talk, you don't talk ill about others. You don't talk, you don't try to boast about yourself. You don't keep, there's this slightly left of center used to be politically correct. Now, what is political correctness has completely altered, right? And now the majority view, and I heard sometime before that, the truth is what the majority thinks is the truth. Now that is very dangerous, because if that is the truth, then there is no scope for the truth, even if there is truth in it, right? So what used to be politically correct has now become woke. So if you are, LGBTQIA plus, or if you are supportive of, things like environment friendliness and things like that, or if you are supportive of, the left of center, you become woke. And woke is nowadays, kind of looked down upon, because woke people are supposed to be in a minority, and the truth is actually what is politically correct now. Right, so we are going through a lot. Yeah, you can go next. How many of you recognize this gentleman? Sajjana. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did expect the answer from Danya, but yeah, we see Sajjana, former ADGP of Telangana, and I think you all know what he was very popular for, his encounter deaths, and we can go. So at the time when there was this Disha rape case, gang rape case, and then he went on to murder, or supposedly they led to a situation where there had to be a killing, and then and the whole internet went agog about how he is the next the next big hero, and then it went on to many years later, the court telling, yeah, please click again. Yeah, the court telling how, this whole thing, there was so much of premeditation in this encounter that it was unbelievable and it was unacceptable in a democratic system, right? We can go next. Okay, I don't know if too many of you would know about this photograph, but this photograph was a very important evidence which was presented. This boy here was 19 years old. This happened in the US, so I'm just giving you a small example. It's a beautiful case of how journalism brought out the truth. 19-year-old boy, his name is Adnan Syed. He was dating a 16-year-old girl, and then she was found murdered, and circumstantial evidence made him, the victim. He was behind bars for 23 years. One lone journalist, after 15 years he was in jail, saw there was too many incongruencies in the judgment, and she went about, and it became serial podcast, one of the world's best podcasts, downloaded 340 million times, and the case was reopened, and very recently, as early as a week back, Adnan Saeed was freed at age 41. He has lost his youth, but at least he's got back his life. So journalism and truth can prevail, should prevail, and yeah. So this is, I'm hoping to raise the questions that, truth should raise in the days to come. Thank you. Hello. Yeah, so I think we'll start with John. Yeah. So I was just curious, when we talk about truth and journalism. In today's world, it has all become about how many stories do we file, how quickly do we file, and then there is a question of the Google SEO, which is dictating what stories are made to be shown to our audiences. ComScore tells us what our numbers are, and the CrowdTangle tells us. So you can't hear?
You are not audible. Maybe there is an issue between us, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So CrowdTangle tells us, what stories need to be filed in order for us to start trending. So among all of these challenges, how does the newsroom actually try to look for the truth when it is publishing stories? Is there a scope for that in the midst of all of these noises?
Thank you very much. Let me just do justice to the title of the discourse, that is fact-based journalism a winning proposition? I think, should I stand there? Because it seems to me there is a problem with the mic.
Hold it like this.
Actually, this is a linear media. We can only talk to you straight. We can't talk among ourselves. Thank you very much. How much time I can take? How much time? Yeah, a few minutes. So at the outset, let me just congratulate Srinivasan Kumar for conducting such a conference, that too based on facts and journalism. Many people, I think, must have spoken about the oxymoron content of that title, that is facts and journalism. But more than Shreyams, I think I should thank his daughters, Devika and Mayura. If they hadn't taken the lead, I don't think Mathrubhumi would have conducted such a seminar. See, as Mark Twain said, if you don't read newspapers, you are uninformed. If you read newspapers, you are misinformed. So, actually, if you had spoken about the type of journalism we practice at that time, you can just imagine the plight of journalism that is around us or in which we are. Now, coming to the facts. What is facts? What is truth? For example, it's like a Mahabharata, Yudhishthira's dilemma. If Yudhishthira said that Ashwatthama is dead, that's a fact, but it's not a truth. Just like that, the sordid episode of Mahabharata gets repeated in journalism in much more visible way nowadays. I don't think many media organizations can conduct such workshops or seminars in the name of fact. My friend Avinash was saying that The television channels have been spoiled because of the bark. If there was no bark, the television channels would have been upright and would be disseminating the information or news. I don't think even M.G. Radhakrishnan would agree to that. See, basically, as Goenka was telling, what are the challenges? According to me, there are external challenges and internal challenges. As Falius Nariman said that, indeed we have freedom of speech, but do we have freedom after the speech? That's a pertinent question. We have freedom till we speak. After we speak, do we have freedom? That question is very pertinent nowadays. If we put out an article, if we put out something, R.K. Lakshman's cartoon was shown here. If you put out a similar cartoon in a mainstream newspaper here, I think editor would be behind the bars now. That's the plight of the journalism which has come to the fore nowadays. Now, I have 2-3 questions to the audience. Have we become inclusive? Have we become representational? Have we drifted away from facts and truth? The so-called freedom of media, if it were to be, say, 5 on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 years back, what is that now? Why is it that the formal media is complaining with regard to the social media? As my friend Mr. Ulleg was saying that, because there is a challenge on the social media. The former media is behind by many light years. Many light years. And if we are not giving the facts, naturally the social media would cater to the audience. There will be a lot of issues there. We are seeing that. The WhatsApp university that has emerged now, that's a result of that. But I would say the failure of the former media has spiraled this so-called movement of social media matrix. That is something which we all who represent the former media need to understand. See, as I am an editor, I am also a member of parliament. Actually, I am demonstrating my bias there. My bias, in inverted comma, if at all it is a bias. Even me heading Kairali TV, I am declaring my intent, my editorial policy. But don't you think that we need to demonstrate all the so-called bias? None of you are demonstrating that. You all have bias. The media has got bias. The first and second press commissions exhorted that we need to delink media from the industrial houses. We need to delink the media from the industrial houses. Can you think of a media now which doesn't have industrial interest now? The biggest network in the country is owned by none other than Mukesh Ambani. Now, since Mukesh Ambani is owning maximum channels and networks, now Adani also has got into the picture. So what do you expect the media to disseminate? If at all, it's owned by corporates. That's the pertinent question which we need to address. Now, we all say that the media has fallen prey to the aggression of the government. Naturally. I think one of the previous speakers was Ruben Banerjee, who was the editor of Outlook. He was summarily sacked. Not because he upheld journalism, but because his writings, his editings were hurting the industry, Raheja's group. So the moment a media is owned by a corporate, in this ambience, you should expect that facts and truth would be sacrificed at that altar. So these are the constraints I think we need to think about it. A very interesting thing is that nowadays people get facts in the newspapers, not from the news, but from the advertisements. People say that at least the ads would be more truthful to the reality than the news. So this is a situation where we have reached. And I think we all need to deliberate. At least this is a welcome step that a media organization has come forward to have such a discussion. Now, let us think about the representational nature of the media. See, 20 crore population in the country, I would say, do not have a representation in executive, in legislature, judiciary, or in the media. 20 crores people. In Kerala, we had a hangama here when the 5th minister was added from the Muslim community. 5th minister. I think editors of Kerala would be aware of that. Muslim League got a 5th minister in the cabinet. Radhakrishnan, how much airtime you must have spent on that? Shreyams Kumar also must have spent a lot of... You are not editor, okay. That is easiest way to the control of the media. See, if Kerala, it created a ruckus. Think about the country where 20 crores people do not have a representation in the cabinet, in the media, in the judiciary. The media doesn't have an issue at all. So we all should think that how the media has drifted. 30 years back, what was the media? What is the media now? A perfect auditing needs to be done. Without having an introspection, if you think that the way forward, what is that? A fact-based journalism is a winning proposition. First of all, where are the facts? Where is the truth? Whose interest you protect? 90% of the population in this country do not even get 1% of the representation in the media. It's not what I say, it's what people who have studied about the media says that. Avinash's friend, my friend too, sitting in the newsroom and the studio says that the nation wants to know many a time. He doesn't even represent 0.5% of the viewers or the population. But still, people want to know. Nation wants to know. What's the truth? See, we have secluded large chunks of population from the media. We don't give any representation to them. So, issues, one is external, second is internal, third, the challenges that the new media must be posing to you, and we need to introspect on that. And we had newspapers 2 centuries back. Raja Ramahan Roy, he brought out a Persian newspaper. See, at that time, he used the newspaper for the social reformation. He fought against sati, untouchability, child marriage, curses. The brilliant journalists India had. Mahatma Gandhi was one of the brilliant journalists. Ambedkar was that. Tilak was that. See, nowadays we think that just because we are away from the people, we are professional journalists. What we call about is professionalism. What is this professionalism after all? What do you see? The professionalism is needed to cater the people. So my view is that unless the media start engaging with the society, you would be quite away from the reality, and that reality is going to kill you. In America, there was a referendum or there was a survey to assess the credibility of each profession. It's an interesting anecdote to read that. So the credibility of the journalists were pegged just half a notch above the second-hand car dealers. The credibility of the journalists in America was seen to be just half a notch about the car dealers, second-hand car dealers. Think about the fact that if at all we have a survey in India to decide about the credibility of the journalists, do a survey among the people, what could be the result of that? It stares at us, actually. We need to introspect. So I think that when we talk about facts, we need to think whose facts it should be and who we represent and what is the plight of the journalism now. Have we gone far away from the people? Have we become exclusive? Are we not, why we are not inclusive? Why we are not expressing or representing the facts and the real issues of the people? I think this session, or rather this workshop, should help the journalist at least to get an idea about what is around us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I think John has raised many interesting questions, and we'll definitely get back to him for some answers for those questions also, as we will be looking for answers from the rest of us. In the meanwhile, I will ask Gen Z. He brought about a very interesting, John spoke about a very interesting topic about journalists. And a little while back when we were discussing, you were talking about how you're asking for journalists to join you, but you're getting content creators to join you. Now, what is journalism? What is content creation? And where does the truth get any clarity between a journalist and a content creator?
Hello. Yeah, so what I was mentioning to you is that there is an inherent crisis as far as credibility in media is concerned, and I think in one of the slides you showed how there are very less readers for fact-check based websites, while clickbait based websites are getting huge traffic. And that's a reality. That's a reality that we are all grappling with, and we have always struggled with that. So the point I was making about content creation is that a lot of mainstream media news sites are asking for younger journalists to work with them as content writers. And what are they writing in terms of content? They're writing about tech. I mean, I don't mean to demean that, because that's news you can use, right? I mean, everyone wants to know what's the next gadget you need to buy, or you need to know that which is the next holiday destination that you need to go. But is that technically journalism? I'm not very sure of that. And there's an entire generation of young media professionals who are entering the newsroom who don't have any interaction with what journalism really is. They are neither going out for reporting, nor are they actually trying to understand what are the stories that need to be covered. They're basically sitting in the offices, and they are typing out opinion which generally comes with years of experience. But in terms of many of the curated newsrooms, and one session earlier has addressed that, they're dishing out opinion pieces without actually having any domain expertise in that topic. So which is why I said that content writing is actually a curse. It's proving to be a curse, because none of them are actually employable in any good newsroom which wants reporters to go out, speak to people, investigate, do some fact checking, do some verification on the ground, and then come back and write stories. So that's a real big crisis, and that crisis will only reflect in the later years. Today when we try to hire reporters, you don't get good reporters, because if anyone has spent some time taking a professional degree, they don't want to come into journalism because of multiple issues. All the issues that we've been talking since morning. Lack of enough financial incentives, the fact that that the industry itself isn't so much of credibility, that they would say that rather I would go somewhere else and earn more money than waste my time doing this. So it's a real big crisis as far as getting in new professionals to come and work with us is concerned.
Gen Z, what do you think is the solution for this? I mean, journalists are not going to drop from the sky. How does one go about? I'll give you a small example. At Ananda Vikatan since 1983, for almost 40 years now, we've been running an annual student journalist program where about 75 journalists, potential journalists participate who are studying in college, and then 5 or 6 of them graduate into our own organization. Today, half of our journalists have come from that program. So, do we have enough of those? Do we have what it takes to create good journalists?
I'm sure, since morning I've been listening to a lot of very senior journalists who I respect and who I'm extremely friendly with, and we keep meeting on and off. And a lot of them are expressing their concerns about where the state of journalism is today. Probably Danya and I, we are one of the youngest editors here on this panel. So maybe, we may actually not share, at least, I can't talk for Danya, but at least I don't share that pessimism to that extent. And let me say that, let me also explain why. I spent about 13 years in television, and I was thoroughly fed up with what I was seeing on television. Then I decided to work for for a business newspaper in their digital newsroom. And then when the opportunity came to start a newsroom from scratch, we looked at what is the gap. And when we saw the gap, we saw that mainstream media was blissfully sleeping away without realizing that political parties had taken the social media by storm. So a lot of people say that Donald Trump came in 2016, and then post that we came to the post-truth era and we understood what fake news is. No, that's not true. Political parties understood that way before. In fact, if you see Obama's campaign in 2008, then you see Narendra Modi's campaign, the growth of AAP from the kind of organization they were into a political organization, you'll see they harnessed social media really well. So I don't share that pessimism, because I feel that there will always be disruption. Digital media outfits will come, they will disrupt the mainstream media organization. 5 years or 2 to 3 years hence, someone else will come and disrupt us. That is the cycle, and there will always be people who would come in and would disrupt the status quo and will come out with new forms of journalism so that people come in. So I'm not very pessimistic of it. I truly understand that there is a problem. There is a problem of supply and demand. But definitely with the new tools that are coming in, and look, in 2016, probably there were only 2 fact-checking sites. When I used to pick up the phone and talk to editors, many of them with whom I was friendly with and they knew me, they used to scoff at me and say, oh, what are you fact-checking us for? Today, all of those mainstream media organizations have fact-checking desks in their own newsrooms. There are, at last count, there are 19 websites which do fact-checking. So it's a welcome step, and I'm sure today it is fact-checking, tomorrow it may be something else, some new form of journalism, and it will emerge over a period of time.
Thank you. Avinash, you're going to be having some tough questions because John, your good friend, has given you a lot to think about, and he's given us a lot to think about, but fortunately I'm moderator, so I can pass on the question to you. So, I read a few words, right? Failure of mainstream media. Then he said, it is time to introspect. And, John said, we do not represent, the country as a whole or our audiences as a whole. I mean, I would really like to try and understand from a mainstream media, a 100-year-old publication, yourself, with your, arms spread across various verticals. How do you see this, Avinash? What are the challenges, and how would you answer some of the questions that John has raised?
First of all, John raised extremely blatant facts, including the fact that I am his friend. So, John was not wrong when he said that, look, people, channels who present less than 1% of the population saying that nation wants to know and tell a narrative. The problem today is that we are not able to accept that the fact has become a casualty in the cacophony of all the medium that is trying to stream news to you in form of stories. That is the biggest problem today. When you come on television channel, you see a filtered media. Filtered media which is governed by the rules, regulations of INB Ministry, licensing norms, editorial ethics code, and etc. the moment you consume the same news on website, you are also simultaneously served with all kind of unfiltered media. And there, people make their own opinion. I'm not saying that people are foolish enough to form a wrong opinion. British Empire always thought the Indians don't know how to govern, right? Inferences are often erroneous. I mean, even if there is a bombardment of wrong facts or wrong opinions or factually incorrect opinion, people are intelligent and smart enough to consume what my friend just said, that finally truth will emerge. They will know what is right. And social media has a role to play. We all need to adapt to that in the current environment. When we do journalism on news channels, we also look at how we curate that news for an audience which is available online, on social, and on internet. Tomorrow, some of my team members are here. I took them to Paris to see a kind of Havas, the world's biggest advertising agency, has created a couch called the Connected Couch, where what you saw in a movie called The Minority Report, what Tom Cruise did with his hand, and you can see the screen on top, and you are watching a news channel. That's what they have already created. The technology exists. Tomorrow, the way the news would be served to us will not require a medium. What Mahabharata example John gave is that news actually, even during the time when Sanjay was doing the live broadcast, right, of the Mahabharata war, today the news has become bereft of medium. Me and you cannot control that. It has gone beyond that. Also, for traditional media publishers and business people, we have to think about one thing. What is the value that we are adding to people sitting here if everyone is a publisher and everyone is a broadcaster?
Absolutely. I think very, very pertinent questions raised by you, Avinash, and points to ponder. Danya, I will try and broach your favorite subject. You know,
Which is what?
yeah, I'll tell you that. So, at one time we used to have readers and viewers, and today they have become audiences and consumers. And media houses are more or less becoming like FMCG. We keep getting feedback, we keep getting information, we keep getting data, analytics, and all of that seems to be also driving the news cycle, and probably the truth somewhere seems to be getting, misplaced in all of this. So, Danya, what do you think about this consumer culture of the news cycle and about the consumers themselves?
Okay, so before I go into that, I just want to tell all the students here that I personally don't like going to journalism conferences, because from morning to evening we'll all be talking about how sad the situation is, how democracy is slipping into darkness. So at one point of time I thought, I'm not going to go for any more conference in India, I'll go for an international conference. Then I went for an international conference and I realized people from every country are saying the same things, that democracy is slipping into darkness, journalism is dying. All that every single editor said here is true. Journalism is facing a huge credibility crisis. We are in a moment of trouble. But I just want to tell all of you that there is no better job that I would have preferred. There is no other job that I would have done, because this is a job which lets me talk to people, tell their stories. So as journalism students, though you do see a lot of channels or TV or newspaper or digital media which you think their journalism is questionable, this is the perfect time to become a journalist in India. Because when our democracy is slipping away, that's the time for you to be a young journalist and ask pertinent questions. And before I come to your question, I just want to add one thing. You asked, how can we have more students come into journalism, right? This is a problem we face. Now, a lot of people don't want to become journalists. I can understand, because media organizations don't pay much. And when you come to a media organization, all that you get is hatred from social media, political parties, movie actors. Everybody is trolling you all the time. So what is your motivation to come to journalism? But beyond all that, I think journalists are mainly upper caste males or females, upper caste female like me, or many of us. So what we need is more representation. We need more women, more Dalits, more Muslims, more Adivasis to come into journalism. We had signed something called the Madras Charter with the Asian College of Journalism. I'm saying this because Mathrubhumi runs a journalism institute. We had signed a Madras Charter with the Asian College of Journalism where I think around 10 to 15 organizations came together and we signed a charter that we will help Dalit students get a scholarship. We will all pool in money and we will also give them jobs. So some of us keep doing that. We have been doing it for many years and Asian College of Journalism gives the bulk of that scholarship. It is to ensure that people from all communities come into journalism. Otherwise, we have no representation. We are just one-dimensional. We only talk about gender. We don't talk about other things. Now to my favorite topic, as Srinivasan said. This is something which people keep asking. Ningalakku bayangara sensational alle. Ningalakku full-time sensational joliyana cheyyunnathu. Ningada headline okke sensational aanu. So I actually thought, okay, nammalakku sensational. We are all really sensational. Because I used to work for a TV channel. As John Britta said, I asked, Nation wants to know for 8 years. Then after 8 years, I decided Nation doesn't want to know. I work for Times Now for 8 years, basically. So at that time, I really thought that, okay, maybe we are being sensational, which is why the audiences are criticizing us a lot. But today, when I run a digital media organization, I also understand how hypocritical the audience is. Let me explain. If I put out, Nayanthara is marrying Vignesh Shivan, it's really important news. I have no problem with it. Everybody wants to watch Nayanthara's pictures getting married. I can tell you 5,000 people are clicking on that story. One person will share it because it doesn't look intellectual if you share Nayanthara wedding Vignesh Shivan on your Facebook wall. At the same time, I put out a story saying environmental degradation and is so much that mangroves in Kerala are dying. 5,000 people will share the story because it looks beautiful on their Facebook wall. I know one person has clicked it. So this is the hypocrisy of the audience also. Which is why, I mean, look at Kerala. You have Mathrubhumi Weekly, which Mr. Shreyams Kumar was telling us. It is still doing the best, but shouldn't it do better? You have, for example, I read this True Copy magazine. I read so many magazines here which put out so much of good journalism. But how many people actually read this? So it is very well and good enough for the audience to keep saying that media sensationalizes, but demand and supply are linked. Unfortunately, it is linked. So if you all resist and say no, for example, I see PC George coming on TV every single day when there is a rape issue. Why? Why is PC George on TV? If the audiences is PC George, right? If the audiences keep saying, I don't want to see him on TV, and you say, I don't want again and again, those people are not going to have him. So the point is the audiences want a certain thing, which is why the media house keeps giving it. But if the audience wants one, unfortunately the media house gives 10 because it works for them. So this is how I think the hypocrisy of both the media houses and the audiences keep feeding each other.
So that's a great perspective, Danya. And John, I have to ask you again.
I was not shouting. I thought the mic is not working, so I was just trying to speak loudly.
No, but that is very well delivered and a very important point at that. You know, end of the day, we have become animals of, the choice of our consumers, and we do what the data tells us to do. We do what the algorithms tell us to do, and we do what the social media tells us to do. And in all of this, our seeking the truth has started slipping some notches. So there is clearly a challenge here. And when you were talking about inclusivity, I just want to give you an example. In the 100 years that we have existed as a magazine, when we recruit, we would never have caste or religion as tick boxes, right? And we have, I'm very happy to say that Dalit writing in Anand Vikatan has always been at the forefront, maybe for the last 20-25 years. And our students who come in from the student scheme are also, we don't know who they are, but they come in and we only train them to be good journalists. So coming back to you on this, John, how would you see the cure for the ails that you had pointed out? You had pointed out that mainstream media has not kept up with the times. Mainstream media doesn't seem to be keen on being representative. and mainstream media doesn't speak the voice that the people actually want to hear, and that the truth is getting suppressed on that. So when you also, as a member of the mainstream media, how would you address these issues? How have you addressed these issues with Kerali, as well as you mentioned something very, very important. By being the head of Kerali TV, you said, my bias is clearly known. It's very, very clear. I think every single newspaper or magazine title, we are biased in either being left of center or right of center, or being extreme right or extreme left. I think we are generally known, especially by our readers, who we are. So I think a bias is something. How does bias impact the truth, and how does one provide for bias when writing the truth?
See, when I said bias, it doesn't mean bias in the sense you meant it. I use the word bias because there is an orientation which I have, a political perspective I have. And I feel that, inverted comma, that so-called bias is an additional window for me to see the society. For example, me being a leftist activist or a politician, it's not something thrust on me. That's my choice. And I do feel that that is an additional window for me to see the society. Whereas there are inherent bias in the society and the media. My friend James Kumar is a socialist. And I do feel that that orientation gives him a much better clarity about what he does than somebody who may be aloof from the social political discourse. Now, coming to the point, there are numerous bias in media, in society. Think about caste, creed, your class consciousness. These are not evident at all. Now, when I talked about the mainstream media, let me be very clear about it. See, during the COVID, 23 days, as part of a small research I counted, 23 days, the mainstream television media debated over a conference held by Tabligh. I'm telling you, a Tabligh conference in Delhi. They were castigated as super spreaders. 23 days, the prime time was spent for discussing, castigating, denigrating, ghettoizing them in the media. Don't you think this is a bias? Don't you think it's an explicit evil? Whereas there was a Kumbh Mela. Not even a single television channel had a serious discourse on that. In fact, we mainstream media, I am self-critical, I am speaking self-critically. I am also part of the mainstream media. But I do feel that my friend talked about the skill, the craft the journalists need to imbibe. But more than that, you need to impart a political consciousness to them. They should be aware about the social science. Without knowing the history, without knowing the politics, just because they know the craft and the skill, what do you think the journalism is going to do? Now, all those editors in Kerala would say the biggest issue in journalism nowadays, especially in television journalism, is that lack of politics, lack of political orientation, lack of political perspective, lack of knowledge about the society in which they reside. So this is the major menace. And we always feel that if we don't report something, that incident or event doesn't exist at all. Humbug. We had a feeling like that. That is where the social matrix social media matrix started playing. Those areas where we fudged, the social media has come to play. There are a lot of 101 things which we can talk about the wrongs of the social media, but we should understand that the so-called social media thrived or flourished on the basis of the cardinal failures of the mainstream media. See, half the time I spent in Delhi, I used to read all the Delhi newspapers, maybe from 1980s. There was a time then we used to have all these investigative stories. Avinash, you also should release about those days. Now, Seema has come from Delhi. You pick up an English newspaper, a Hindi newspaper. Can you ever think about having an investigative story in a newspaper? The biggest investigative story in mainstream print media is an interview of a cabinet minister. That is the investigative story. Earlier we used to get so much of exposure about the corruption scandals. And these used to be linked to the parliament. The parliament zero-hour uproar used to be on the basis of the investigative stories. This even provoked one of the pillars of Indian democracy, the Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramana, to say that the investigative journalism in India has passed off. There's a demise of investigative journalism. Let us be very truthful to us. See, most of the biggest exposures in the world happened outside the periphery of the media. I'm talking about Assange, Snowden, all those people like that. None of the formal media was instrumental in bringing the biggest exposures in this world. So we have fudged, we have failed the society. We have taken the media to a narrow trajectory. This is where we need to do a lot of introspection. I am glad to say that the so-called language press or the provincial media or the state media is much more robust in connecting with the people than the national media. Let's be realistic about that. So first of all, journalism is not something about craft and skill. It's about the people, their issues, their aspirations. We should manifest those issues rather than editing a story, sensationalizing it, bringing it colorful, putting it in a big jacket. This is not the issue at all. This is about, putting our feet on the ground. Have we gone away from the people, from the society? That's a pertinent issue I think we need to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, John. It was a very, very insightful thought there. And Jency, I think one of the issues that John brought about was, if I can encapsulate it, empathy, right? Somewhere the truth can come out only when we are in a position to empathize with, the source of truth. So do you see that empathy is missing, or it has been given a go by, or is there incentive to avoid empathy which is causing the challenge that we have in trying to keep the truth as the core of everything we do?
I agree with that. And where does empathy come from? Empathy comes when reporters are out on the ground reporting, right? You can't be sitting in the office, as I said earlier, writing desk-based stories, curating stories, using terms like content writers, coming in and pushing out content, and then expect them to one day go and write a story which is on a social issue or on a political issue, as John is pointing out. And that political consciousness, yes, part of that can be built by editors and a newsroom culture and a newsroom which thrives on taking very substantive issues and reporting on it. That can be one way, or the fact that you end up hiring reporters who are really committed to the entire craft. And as a fact-checking newsroom, for us, the longest time that we've spent, about 4 to 5 years, we've spent really looking at bringing back the fact into the newsroom in terms of how we build processes where we are ensuring that every time we write a story, it's sourced properly, it is attributed properly, that we do not end up picking up stuff from here and there. There are so many stories that we've written where in one story we counted 17 mainstream media publications who had picked a wrong claim written on it, and when we did the charting, one paper picked up from the other newspaper publication, the other news publication picked up from the other publication, and it was a chain reaction. We counted 17 of them who wrote the same story which was wrong. Now, a lot of this can be countered, and what we are trying to do in a very small way, and we are a very small newsroom, is that we are putting reporters out on the streets. So if there is an incident like the Pune incident that happened, or any other incident like Jammu and Kashmir when Article 370 was repealed, we are sending reporters out there to go there, meet, talk to people, understand where the issues are coming from, rather than just listening to what political parties are saying or what the government wants us to know or wants to convey through us. So that's the only way. You have to get back on the ground. You have to send your reporters on the streets to meet people, to talk to them, and then come back and write stories, rather than having this culture of creating entire desk-based reporting where everyone is sitting in office and dishing out opinion. I think that's the failure of the system, which I'm sure that many newsrooms are realizing now.
Avinash, John brought out a very interesting divide between the so-called English national media and the regional media. You are in a unique position to have your feet on both sides of the table, right? So would you like to tell us, how do you see, is there a difference between the way English language media is approaching the truth vis-a-vis the way the language media is approaching the truth?
I agree with one thing. With John, is that true journalism actually right now happening in India only in the language newspapers and language TV. To be honest, almost you said that.
Almost and saying a lot of difference here, Ajpani.
Okay. There is a lot of connection between what is getting reported on the language websites, language newspaper, language TV, vis-a-vis what is happening in the country. Probably the pressure of TRPs, pressure of circulation coverage and etc. is not so much on language. Having said that, what is happening today is a perception getting created by a couple of news channels. We have to understand one thing, that television is a business of selling drama. Factual based news does not work. The largest watched TV channel in the world in news is not CNN, it's Fox News. And there is only opinion there. There is hardly any reporting. Fox had 55% of the United States market share when COVID broke, and Fox audience believed it does not exist. They believed it for a very long time because that's what they propagated. Television creates opinion, but it also, the way the drama is created on television, it sells because you get TRP. Unfortunately, the structure of our business is flawed. This is the elephant sitting in the room nobody wants to address. The structure of our business is that nobody sitting here will pay you $10 for your website. They want to consume it for free. When you consume it for free, you can only supplement your costs through advertising. And advertising does not chase truth. It chases eyeballs. We have done numerous studies in the market. When we go, people say, oh, you should report about the farmers' plight in Bundelkhand. You know, you should cover about the riots in these places. But what are they watching? FTV. Let me tell you honestly, they have not watched what happened on news channels last night. But they will tell you that I watch Discovery, I watch NGC. But fact is that they don't watch those channels. So as long as our dependence on the advertising will remain the core of our business, we can't shy away from serving to that audience. Our job at this point of time, and we should not curse ourselves for doing the bad job what she just said, is that how do you make a story even while telling the truth in entertaining way? These two things are not separate. You can tell an interesting story in entertaining way, and that's the job at our hand is.
So that's yeah, absolutely. Please.
I just want to say something here, but I've spent time in television as well, and I agree with what he's saying because he's the CEO of the largest TV channel. One observation that we had in our earlier, in the early days of a fact-checking exercise was that ABP used to have this show that they used to do on fact-checking, Viral Such. Now, one of our favorite fact-checking exercises used to be where by the time ABP's fact-checking used to come to the point where they're telling the fact, they built so much drama into the story that someone has gone on social media, taken that clip out, kept the fact out, and then they make it viral on social media.
Yeah,
so,
right.
for us, it was our favorite pastime to actually fact-check that. And I used to tell my newsroom that is television. They have to build the drama to reach that point. And that seems to be the unfortunate part of how television deals with news these days.
But that's what it is. Selection of truth. When you're talking about truth, that is the selection of truth that social media is doing. It is cutting out a speech, it is cutting out a story and saying that this is what we said. You are right. We were bombarded with queries that this is what you are running from political parties to all kind of. But we said, what's the full story? We are revealing the truth. But also, why we used to do it is TRP, because paise bhi to kamane. Just telling the truth does not help,
Absolutely. And Avinash has brought about a very, very important aspect here, which I'm very happy to say.
Can I ask a question to Avinash?
Yes, of course, John.
Avinash, the sum and substance of his presentation, what I understood is that good journalism is bad business. Is that the case now?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Because,
No, not at all. I'll tell you something. Look at Caravan. Not many will buy, but those who are buying, they're paying that price of 100 rupees for a magazine in a month, right? There are websites who are asking for money to donate. I think that's a bad way of doing business. You should ask people to pay for it. Anant has started selling subscription of Indian Express, and I am made to believe that it is doing quite well. We have to have the courage of asking people to pay for getting to know the truth in an entertaining way. Because unless the story is not interesting, nobody will pay you.
This is exactly what I was trying to say. The ownership structure of the mainstream media absolutely is one of the major issues. And there are newspapers abroad, especially in Scandinavian countries, which are owned by trust, public trust. I mean, even in India, there are enterprises like that. Suppose on the basis of subscription, if the channel or the media entity sustains, they would be better equipped to cover the incidents in a better way rather than the corporate media.
So as you said about something, I'll just add to that one last point. As you said about the bias, I often tell in my newsroom and to my team, there is nothing called unbiased in this world.
Correct.
Our degree of biases changes. Being neutral is the biggest bias because you are not giving the due to someone who rightly deserves, right? So in today's world, what if a large business house owns the publication or the news channel, the first duty is to say that, boss, this is owned by this company and hence we are not reporting about it.
That is only one word.
I want to add a point on bias, and because everybody spoke about bias, all human beings are biased. We all have our political biases, we all have biases on our lived experiences. I am a woman, I have certain biases. You are a man, you have certain biases. We all have our biases. I think journalism schools oversell this word neutrality. Are you a neutral journalist? Half the time people ask me, are you a neutral journalist? I'm like, no. Neutrality is not my problem. Objectivity is my problem. My bias is towards truth. My bias is towards democracy. My bias is towards the people who read me, the people I think should read me. So as long as we understand that, for example, someone can be CPIM, someone can be Congress, someone can be BJP also and work in a newsroom. But the point is, those are your political ideologies. But still, when you are a journalist out in the field, are you being objective? Are you being biased to the truth? That's all that matters. And then the question of what is truth. I just want to say a small example. There will be no contempt of court after I say this, because I'm just going to quote from a judgment. Last week, did you all read the story that the survivor in the actor sexual assault case had gone to the Kerala High Court asking for the judge to be changed, and the Kerala High Court disagreed? Did anybody read the story that the Kerala High Court said, I won't change the judge in the actor assault case? None of the students here read news? Did you all read the news that the High Court said they won't change Judge Hani Varghese, who's looking at the Dilip case? Did you all read?
Did it come on Instagram?
Did it?
If it did,
You didn't read? Okay.
They would have read it.
A lot of people have read. I mean, couple of people have read. Basically, last week, the Kerala High Court said, I will not change the judge. Judge Hani Varghese is hearing the case. That is the truth. There's absolutely no problem in reporting it, right? All of us reported it. But that is half truth. If you look at that judgment, which is some 70 pages only, it says there is a call. This is a complaint made by the survivor. There is a call by this accused person, Dilip, to a lawyer called Ullas. They both speak to each other, and this man says, Tede Valli Kalil Chutti, which is the judge's husband, who is a police officer, was accused in a case of, I think, torture. And he contacted she contacted a lawyer called Santosh on his behalf. Santosh and Ullas speak to each other. So the police have proven that there is a call between Dilip and Ullas. The police have proven that there is a call between Ullas and Santosh. And that immediately after talking to Ullas, Santosh has called Judge Hani Varghese. The judgment says this. But the judge asked, but alas, there is no direct proof that Dilip ever contacted the judge. Of course, we are assuming that people directly call each other these days, right? So if I am going to report the truth is that the High Court judge said, I will not change Judge Hani Varghese. But that truth is half truth, and that is worse than a lie, because I am not telling the full story of what the judgment says. So I think half the time in the pursuance of truth, we don't say the full story because we don't get the time. We don't have the luxury of reading things. Of a 70-page judgment is too much for even reporters in my newsroom to read, because I will be asking them, where is the other story? Where is the other story? So I think truth is a casualty to the fact that we don't get time. And we have to move out of that cycle of putting out every news story and focus on what we want to focus.
Yeah. That's a great point that you've made out there. And I would like to start from you to, in 1 minute, elucidate one good piece of journalism that you have seen in recent times which can tell us that truth still prevails and truth can still mean good business. I would like to come to each and every one of us to come with an example where we've recently seen journalism which can show that truth can still mean good business. Danya.
I mean, I can enlist a lot of stories, but I will quickly tell you 2 or 3. One is, I'm very biased towards the News Minute, so I will start with the News Minute, obviously. I have a colleague called Prajwal Bhatt. He has been writing consistently on how the saffron shawl protests started when the hijab controversy started in Karnataka, right? So he's been writing about how the entire saffron shawl thing was very, very mobilized. It was not at all organic. The second story I would suggest is Nidhi Suresh has a story in the News Laundry about this woman who is raped when she's 13 years old or 14 years old. She's a child. She has a child. That child is now 25 years old, and I think the woman is maybe, like, do the calculation, whatever, 48, 50 years old. The child tells his mother, go file a case. She files a case, the DNA samples match, and now there is a rape case against the 2 men who raped her when she was 13. That's a fantastic story. The third is the Frontline long story by Ilango and Rajashekharan on Sterlite shootings. He put out he put out excerpts of what was found by the fact-finding committee on what happened in May 2 or 3 years ago when the shootings happened in Thoothukudi. So 3 stories I gave you first.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Avinash.
Well, there are many. I can plug in all my channels here, but the latest one is we did a story. We broke actually AVP Ganga, my channel for UP and Uttarakhand, broke the story of this rape and murder case of I don't know if the rape is not proven, but the murder case of a young girl, the hotel receptionist in Uttarakhand, and we have carried the story in an investigative way. We have gone to all the ex-employees of that resort and we found out that there was a larger design. I mean, there was a deep-rooted crime out there in that place, and he's the son of an ex-BJP minister. And we have no pressure from the government, let me tell you this, not to do story. We just did a story in Punjab where we said that how in the name of school admissions, the fraud was getting committed. And we exposed that story, and after that government has acted. So these are the two stories just now that we remember, and somebody said about death of investigative journalism. A bit of it is happening, but a lot of it has stopped because of the court ruling on that you can't do unfair practices while doing the, there is a Delhi High Court ruling on that. So that's why a lot of investigative journalism is now out of the bound.
Since we are in Kerala, I want to add one more story. Mathrubhumi Online has this journalist called Nilina Atoli. I mean, there are quite a few others, but Nilina's stories, people have to really go check. She has written consistently about sexual violence and many other things to the extent that I know that people now reach out to her, like survivors now reach out to her to say, can Nilina please write on this story? So we should read. And I think Barkha Dutt's Mojo story, actually tracking down that BJP guy who was part of the committee which was involved in the remission of Bilkis Banu, and he said, "Wo sab sanskari Brahmin the." That was one good piece of journalism.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Chansi.
Well, I would say that considering your own slide shows that how fact-checking is not read, I don't want to point out to one story, but I would say that a lot of the audience actually needs to show some more love to fact-checking sites, because we actually spend a lot of time investigating stories. While our craft doesn't get that much attention, apart from the fact that it's become quite fashionable to say that okay, fact-checkers exist and they're doing a good job. But otherwise, we don't really get people reading the stories, because what mostly people do is they'll go look at the claim, look at the fact, and then they will go and retweet it, but they will not go and read it. For example, this Pune story about whether the Popular Front activists, whether they shouted Pakistan Zindabad or not. In fact, my newsroom is working on a story about why this has become a recurrent problem. If you go and read the story that Boom has written, you'll find that over a period of 48 hours, we went and sourced different video clips from different angles, and we show why you can fall prey to the fact that it is Pakistan, but it is not, but it is in fact Popular Front. So there's a lot of craft in it, because you have to cut the video, slow it down. There's a lot of effort that goes in those kind of stories. So I would urge everyone here to spend more time on Boom Live's site, and I'm sure I'll see the traffic rushing after some time.
John, good piece of journalism you've recently encountered.
See, it's our predicament to pick up, few stories which is of relevance to good journalism. That itself, give an idea about the way in which we conduct ourselves. But I would say that there have been so many good stories, and that is why we run media entities. One story, I would say, the series of stories done by The Wire with regard to the privacy issues in the context of Pegasus, that is one thing. And second is that when the World Health Organization said that 50 lakhs people must have perished in India in the COVID, none of the newspapers took it up. The only weekly, that is Economic and Political Weekly, ran a story substantiating the fact that 50 lakhs people must have died because they vetted some of the insurance claims as sample, which the mainstream media totally blacked it out. And but another story which I would say, it may not be that relevant to us, but it was quite interesting to me, that is Indian Express. When Smriti Irani's version was ran in the front page, the only newspaper which tried to, seek the truth was Indian Express, that silly soul cafe in Goa. At least that newspaper had the guts to say that the so-called first company had a shareholding pattern which obviously involves the family of the Smriti Irani. So these are three, four stories which struck me at all.
Thank you. I'm going to take some questions from the audience. There are two questions which have come to me, and I'm just going to read it out as they come. Nowadays, people are running behind the agenda set by news channels which are not facts. And there are only few people who check facts. In our media classes also, when we ask our mentors about the possibility of practicing ethics when entering into the profession, they say that we have to work according to what the company says. So there will be a dilemma between practicality and theory. So how will fact-based journalism work in this present unfortunate scenario? Any of the panel members?
I don't know who's advising them to follow what the company says. So I'm just like surprised at that. I mean, there are definitely some things which you will have to abide, something which, I mean, like I told you my previous job history. So there are some things that you have to do, but many things that you can choose not to do, and you can clearly say, I don't want to do. So I don't know if that's the right thing to be telling journalism students, that you will have to do what the company says. No, you don't owe it to the, you're not a journalist for the company's sake. You're a journalist because you want to tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would second that and say, you know, if you are a good journalist, there would be enough number of companies who would want you on the job. But if you are just going to work for what the company says, then even the company is not going to respect you beyond a certain stage. So I'd like you to keep that in mind, please.
Absolutely.
As pointed out by the moderator, if fact-checking platforms are not getting traction, does it mean people don't want factual information? How do we tackle this situation? I mean, this is clearly one of the biggest dilemmas that we ourselves are facing.
Well, yeah, that's a dilemma that we face ourselves. Like my founder says that, you know, often when there are meetings where we kind of we are trying to look at what else can we do to actually, you know, enlarge our reader base. And he says that no one is waking up in the morning and saying, oh, let me go to Boom site or Alt site and read what is the fact-checking story today. That is probably I mean, that kind of loyalty, I don't know whether it exists for anyone else, but it doesn't really exist for fact-checking sites. But that doesn't mean that fact-checking is not important. What it only means is that we just need to work on our distribution better. And I feel that it's not something that, you know, that fact-checking can only be done by us, right? Mathrubhumi has a fact-checking desk. You know, I met them today, and I'm pretty excited to see the kind of work they're doing. And most mainstream media organizations are now having fact-checking web desks. So the more newsrooms adopt fact-checking, that will bring about a change. So, you know, you don't literally need only standalone fact-checking websites to function and to exist. Maybe tomorrow we may morph into something else. We will do much more ground reporting. We will do more other forms of reporting apart from doing fact-checking as well, while mainstream media organizations increase the count of stories that are being fact-checked by their own team, and also ensuring that their processes are putting in place fact-check policies as well. You know, I think that's the best way to look at it.
Of course, John.
See, I think overemphasize on inverted comma fact-checking, we would be obfuscating. Because just because we check the facts and give the facts, everything would be absolutely all right. That's a mirage. That's something which we need to be very clear about it. Think about the slant in the journalism. I've done a little bit of research in it. See, most of the media have become torch bearers of right-wing ideology. How do you, correct it by doing a fact-checking? How do you do that? So just saying that we would check the facts. See, the mooring, the orientation, the choice of the stories, how to pick up the stories, what do you need to project. Suppose the Indian Prime Minister becoming the high priest of Hindu religion. What is the fact-checking had to do with that? You celebrate that. That is the editorial ideology, driving you. So I think just because you correct the facts here and there, put the nut and bolts, that will set everything all right. That's an illusion.
But fact-checking is also for posterity,
I'm not
right?
saying that fact-checking is not needed. I'm saying there are much bigger menaces. We should not limit it to fact-checking alone. I would say one more thing. Ayodhya movement, which happened in India, was absolutely driven by the media. Is not a fact. The Hindu right-wing ideology. Don't you think many of the newspapers, many of the media entities are the torch bearers of the Hindutva dominant ideology here. So these are the facts. So when we talk about nuts and bolts and picking out something from here, tidbits, we should not obfuscate ourselves. Let us have a larger picture too. I'm absolutely okay with the fact that we need to have facts. But there are certain bigger menace, bigger shadows. The elephant is in our room. Without seeing the elephant, we should not chase the footprints. That's all what I want to say.
I would say that, we should fight the battles that we can. For example, before 2016, if there was a claim, you will not get, and since we are all slaves of Google, what do? We go and search on Google, right? So before 2016, when fact checkers were not there, you will get the claim that political parties are driving as a narrative. Today, if you go and put any claim which you read anywhere on social media, if you're a discerning reader, if you are someone who values the quality of information you want, you will get, with the claim you will get, with an Op India, you will get some fact-checking site who's also put out their version of what the facts are, and not their version, but using it evidence-based, looking at what are the sources that they have spoken to cops, they have spoken to people who matter, they have checked the FIR copies. That is the evidence-based information that is required. And today, if you go on Google and check, if that is the only way you're going to check, then you will find, for every claim, you will find a fact-checking site story as well.
Just think about the fact that one of the leading media houses, Avinash knows that, one of the biggest networks in India, took shares in something like 2,000 companies in India. I mean, as a barter to good news, positive stories, they availed 10%, 15% shares in 2,000 companies in India. I don't want to mention that group. How are you going to check?
John, you don't have to mention the name.
Yeah, I would not.
Everybody knows the name.
So this is the plight of journalism in this country. We should be aware of that. Just because, we need to, we can check a fact or not, that's not going to obliterate that menace that is looming over us. So these are issues which we need to, think about it. I'm sorry.
I think that opens up a completely new topic where practically world over, corporate corruption is the biggest form of corruption world over. And I think you've opened that Pandora's box, but I think that will have to be for another discussion. I think we are clear, I think the panelists are all clear about one thing. The truth is clearly in danger. And the truth is clearly in danger because of the situation in which media houses and journalistic approach to the truth has found itself in. And it is not that we are running away from the truth, or it's not that truth is not to be found. It is just that the quest for the truth is becoming more and more difficult, and those challenges have to be addressed. We need to wake up. This is a wake-up call, and I believe there will be ways and means by which, if a discerning user is looking for the truth, there are ways and means to find it. There are enough institutions and enough organizations who are working towards it, including many of the media brands that you see around you. And it's important that we need to understand that as long as the consumers are the readers are going to seek the truth, truth will always be found. I hope I have spoken on behalf of all the panelists here, and I thank you all for your time, and I thank you, the audience, for being so patient and waiting till the end of the last session.
A bigger round of applause, please, for our speakers of the final session. They did bring a wonderful energy to conclude this 3-session, one-day event on World News Day. And to thank them on behalf of Mathrubhumi and present them with a token of our appreciation, welcoming Mr. Shajan Kumar, Head of Fact-Checking and Data Visualization, Mathrubhumi. Requesting you to please come upon the stage, sir. Requesting our Honorable MP, John Britta, sir, to kindly accept our token of love and gratitude. Thank you very much for your presence, sir. Requesting Mr. Jency Jacob, Managing Editor, Boom Fact Check, to kindly accept our token of appreciation. Inviting our honorable moderator, B. Srinivasan sir, to kindly accept our token of love. Thank you very much, sir. Requesting Avinash Pandey sir, CEO ABP Network, to kindly accept our token of love. And requesting Dhanya ma'am, Editor-in-Chief, The News Minute, to accept our token of gratitude. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shajan sir. And before we go on to the conclusion, requesting Mr. Mahesh Madhav, Daily Hunt, Director, Content Alliances and Operations, Daily Hunt, to please come up on stage, and inviting Ms. Devika Shreyamskumar, Vice President, Operations, Mathrubhumi, to kindly present him with a token of our deep gratitude. A big round of applause for Daily Hunt for their constant support for this event. Mathrubhumi, Sacred Facts, Media in a Post-Truth World, this one-day event celebrating our common cause of truth-seeking, was in association with Daily Hunt. Welcoming Mr. Mahesh Mahadev, Director, Content Alliances and Operations, Daily Hunt. So kindly accept a token of our love. So if you could kindly take the center. Requesting Ms. Devika Shreyamskumar to kindly stay back, because we do have a prize to distribute. We had requested your photos and tags, and yes, we have a winner. So inviting the winner of Mathrubhumi Books Selfie Booth Contest, Anjana AS, BA Journalism and Mass Communication student from Christ Nagar College. Congratulations, Anjana. We promised a heavy gift, so since we want to make it easy for you to carry it, we're going to give it in the form of a coupon, a 2,500 rupees worth coupon to buy the books of your choice from Mathrubhumi Books. Requesting Anjana to kindly take the center stage. Thank you so much. We'd appreciate some applause right now. So thank you so much to all the students who visited, especially to Anjana. Thank you so very much. Thank you, ma'am. We've all been like a family for the day. We've had food together and discussed some very deep thoughts and visions together. But to formally wind up, we do need to express our gratitude on behalf of Mathrubhumi and all our honorable guests. Inviting on stage our leader for the day. All the staff members have been working under his constant supervision. He's delegated the work that needs to be delegated and has been a foot soldier like the true leader he is. Executive Editor, Mathrubhumi News Channel, Rajiv Devraj sir, kindly come up on the stage. Thank you so very much.
A very good evening to all those who have gathered here right through the day. Mathrubhumi, as one of the pioneers of Indian journalism, finds it extremely fulfilling to have initiated this discussion on fact-based journalism. It has been a privilege, honor, and great learning to listen to each one of the pioneers who spoke both offline and online. I would like to place on record our most sincere gratitude to all the speakers. Thank you, Daily Hunt, for the partnership to make this happen. Thanks to all of you for having taken time out to be here in person today, especially the journalism students. From Mathrubhumi, we assure you that we will continue being responsible and more responsible when it comes to getting the news across to you. Thank you and have a great evening. Thank you.